What's up guys, Ben here bringing you another video today. Things are a little slow in Rostermania. I'm recording this on Tuesday morning and I wanted to put a video together and again kind of do this exercise on what's sort of holding Rostermania up, where some of the key decisions are right now, and why we really haven't seen any announcements so far in this. Let's dive in. So I think there are kind of a couple of key dominoes that need to fall. I'm going to keep using this dominoes analogy, but it'll make sense if you guys stick with me here. There are a couple of key decisions that are kind of holding up a lot of these teams right now because everything sort of cascades. Let me sort of explain those. So number one is a situation on Atlanta FaZe with the fourth spot in their roster to join Thelium, Abizi, and Simp. Obviously, Arstays now supposedly moved on to LA Gorillas, so a spot is open. According to Zuma last night, and I've heard similar, that FaZe have kind of confirmed and are finishing up the details around their fourth player, and they're going to announce. There's been a couple of discussions, and we've done a couple of videos on this, on where this player might be. It might be a sub player, it might be an AR player. Recently, I've heard it's probably moving more towards an AR type player, and my guess is it's probably down to two individuals. One is Insight. The only thing with the Insight situation is he's on Toronto, he's contracted, and they don't really want to let him leave. So if he is the player, then that cascades to the Toronto situation, because then they would need to replace Insight, and we'll get to that in a second. The other option is Slasher. And I think more interesting than Insight, and why, again, this is multiple teams kind of slowing things down, is Austin is probably in sort of that restricted free agent, we'll let you walk type category, because again, LAG's picked the varsities. So my guess is if Austin, aka Slasher, is not going to this team, he's got other offers on the table, has been kind of, working on parallel options. So those teams, and I'm thinking it's probably like in New York or a Boston or Florida, that's definitely looking to finish their roster comp, are probably waiting on finding out if he's going to this team or not. And to circle back on the Insight thing as well, we've seen tweets like this. So clearly Toronto is thinking about one or two things here. A, are they considering life without Insight? Or B, are they thinking about like further changes down the line? I think we'll get more clarity once FaZe announces their fourth, and that will kind of explain some of the other decisions that might need to be made here. The next domino, I think, to fall, and I'm going to say sort of a 2A, 2B situation, is what's happening with New York and what's happening with Boston, because those are both teams that I think are essentially looking for one player and are not doing sort of a full squad wipe situation. Let's talk about New York first. This right now is a supposed rumored roster. Again, this is based on sort of what was discussed on the flank last week. Kismet's obviously currently under contract with New York. Hydra, at this point, we haven't heard a lot about him shopping around still, so I think it's safe to say that he's probably going back to New York right now. And it seems like him and Skies have a lot of chemistry, but again, I could see this being like Slasher, Major Maniac, but I think Skies is probably the best of the group, so let's put him there for now. The situation for New York then is they still need a fourth player on this roster. They do have Pollux under contract, but it seems like he's going elsewhere based on what he's been tweeting, and the fact that he tweeted out that he was an RFA a couple days ago. So there are a couple of different stub options available out there. You're probably looking at a couple of players here. I could see Priestess potentially being on this roster, Preston being really good with either sub or an AR, kind of come in and be a glue guy once again on this team and sort of gap fill. It would be an interesting pair with Hydra, sort of different players. I don't know necessarily if New York's going to go down this route, but Preston's a consummate team player, and like if you're looking for someone to be in and just sort of make sure that all the pieces are working and get on every day and try and like be that example player, like Preston is always going to be your guy on that. Another interesting option for New York is Standy. Obviously, it does not seem like at the moment with Minnesota going forward with Attach, Cammy, Afro, and Bance, it doesn't seem like Standy is fitting back in on the Minnesota squad. So could see him in this New York situation. That would definitely be interesting. Him and Hydra, fast duo. Really like sort of the SMG prowess of this team. So definitely a potential option for New York. I think my final kind of CDL-ish option is probably Cole Havoc. We haven't heard much about him in this Rostermania. Again, another really good submachine gun player, very good at S&D. Him and Hydra would be an interesting pair, but I kind of actually like it, low-key. I think he's pretty funny, kind of helps with content. This would be a really interesting squad. I think some other options that I can't kind of use this tool for would be if they go down a route of looking at some of the more challengers types of players. So you're looking at like a Vikul, you're looking at like a Beans, Sporty. Definitely could see New York going a couple of different options with this, but they're one thing that's sort of waiting, a lot of people waiting on decisions to see what happens with this team. So 2B domino, the second like kind of combo domino, is what Boston's going to do. CDL Intel tweeted Sunday night that Boston's basically looking at Nero Vivid Awakening +1. We know that Methods is currently under a game launch extension, so I think then really the question on this team is who's the AR? And I think, again, this is where Slasher comes into play for the squad, because if Austin's not going to FaZe, I could see Boston thinking about, do we do the Zinni for Slasher swap? Is that better for us? They could also be looking at Caesar Skies. Again, if Skies doesn't go to New York, does he go to Boston? So a little bit of sort of a circular situation here with New York and Boston waiting on the FaZe situation, deciding who their next players are. And also, for what it's worth, while we were recording this video, this tweet actually just came out from CDL Scrim Intel that Beans is also in the mix potentially for Boston. So again, kind of a lot of people just sort of waiting on their dominoes to see what happens. So we'll see. I think the Boston and New York stuff will follow the FaZe stuff. And we'll get clarity to the final set of dominoes. I think the final set of dominoes then is what happens with Florida, Vegas, what happens with London Royal Ravens. These are teams that unfortunately aren't going to be tier 1 destinations for top free agents. So they got to wait for everybody to sort of filter through. So again, this is why you're seeing players like Beans linked to these teams, because they are likely sort of going to end up at the top of the list once everybody's sort of sorted on the teams. So it's kind of hard to predict how some of this is going to shake out. London seems to be getting Paul X, maybe re-signing Zero. So they're going to have 2 spots basically for sub players. Can see them going in the EU route. Vegas is sort of a TBD situation. I interviewed Temp over the weekend. He said he wanted to get a mini AR pair, but again, I don't think they're going to want to run it back with like a veteran sub duo. That's just a guaranteed way to get 12th, which I don't think they want. So again, they may be interested in sort of similar players that like a London's in, maybe taking a chance on a Wardy or a Beans or a Vikul type. The Florida is an interesting situation. I think more so than, to me, London and Vegas, because I actually think Florida might be able to put together kind of a very interesting team, because you've got players like Priest and Major Maniac sitting around. You've got some young players like Beans and Wardy. I think Vikul is also another interesting player, just kind of lying around waiting for a team situation. And so Florida might end up of the 3 with the more interesting roster. So we got to see how it shakes out. Do they make Dave a part of that, or are they just going to ride Dave on the bench? Again, they're all kind of waiting on the next set. I think one final thing, now they bring up Vikul, because I saw this tweet this morning. So we obviously don't know when the season starts, but I think it's a little bit unfair to say it's difficult to get the deal done with Vikul due to the visa situation. I think at this point, if you're talking about like the end of August, or when you're agreeing to terms and you're ready to move forward with getting his P1 visa petition and paperwork all in order and probably getting it expedited, he's got plenty of time, I think, to get that done. So that's not really a concern for me with Vikul, like in terms of getting a work visa. It is a question of him just getting on a team, and then the team's got to submit it, because the way that process works is you obviously got to show to the government that, hey, I'm a professional player, this is the team I'm attached to, the schedule. Like, you got to get all that stuff sorted, and obviously you got to get on a team first. You can't do that as an individual. And also the application fee is like not cheap if you're expediting, so someone's got to pay for that. But again, I think he's good enough that he'll get on a team if he gets it done next week or so. I personally don't think that there's any concerns on my end with the P1, so he should be good to go for the beginning of the season. And yeah, guys, that's basically it. I mean, by the time this video comes out, maybe we'll get some clarity on some of these situations, then we'll make a follow-up video and talk a little bit more about some of the confirmed teams. But right now, between those like 5 squads, we're just sort of waiting on key players to make decisions, and then everybody else will then go down their list and lock their teams in. I was kind of hoping that some of this would get done on Sunday, but it seems like it's dragging out a couple of days. But we are in the middle of August. People are on vacation. They're not really in a super big rush to make these decisions. So it is what it is. That's what happens in the dog days of summer. Let me know in the comments what you think about some of these teams. Do you like some of the compositions? Do you like FaZe picking up Slasher? What do you think of the inside situation? Would you like Toronto to pick up a few extra players? What about Florida? What about New York? Do you think Boston keeps in? Let's talk about it in the comments, and I'll respond to a few messages. If you like my video, obviously smash that like button. Definitely will always appreciate any and all subscribers to my channel. We're going to keep pumping out content in the coming days and weeks. And as always, guys, we will see you guys on the next one.